What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/StoriesAboutKevin. Alright, this story's called Kevin the Soldier Part 1, Arrogant Daddy's Boy. If you read the Kramer saga, welcome back. This isn't about her though. She was around for part of this, but didn't really have a role. This story is about another guy I'll creatively nickname Kevin. I met the guy in 2006, a whole 14 years ago by the way, that's crazy. Just before our company's deployment. He came off as fairly standoffish and a bit of a know-it-all. Physically, he was a stick covered in very edgy tattoos. I'm assuming the tattoos were to help make him look tougher. He was not that tough. I really didn't get to know him too well until after the deployment, but that doesn't mean I didn't hear about his shenanigans. You see, before I ever met the guy, he'd already built up a bit of a reputation as an arrogant daddy's boy. Daddy was the command sergeant major of a major combat division. I won't say which one though, but they're popular for horseback riding. Kevin would constantly remind people of this fact. For those reading this and don't know, if you're a legacy soldier, that's awesome. But if you're constantly talking about how much of a badass your insert relative is, please shut up. No one wants to hear about it. Instead, live your own adventures and make your own stories happen. Now on to what you're here for. Kevin came to the unit and immediately earned the enmity of his platoon sergeant, who we'll refer to as the Shield. The Shield is a very respectable man, tough but fair. He didn't put up with bacon sauce and would go to bat for his soldiers any day of the week. But get on his bad side and oh boy! So Kevin comes to the Shield's platoon and notices his beret is messed up. A black beret was the standard headgear worn during day-to-day operations back then, with the patrol cap being worn out only in the field or in the motor pool. The Shield asked Kevin to fix his beret, but Kevin argued and claimed his looked fine. This would go on every time the Shield saw Kevin. The Shield finally got fed up with his back and forth and orders Kevin to write an RBI, basically an essay, on proper wear of the beret based on the Army regulations. Instead of doing the RBI, Kevin decided to call Daddy and receive a thumb drive about headgear regulations written by another soldier. The Shield was not amused and made him handwrite an RBI while being monitored. Now, about a month or two before our deployment, the Shield's platoon was selected to become our battalion's platoon security detail, more or less the battalion commander's bodyguards and personal security, and the Shield was authorized to replace any soldier he wished. One of those was Kevin. Kevin officially became another platoon's problem, and a problem he was. I'm not sure what else he got up to in the intervening weeks. While we were on pre-deployment leave, he got married. No one knew he was in a relationship. And of course, his new team leader, who I'll call Dog Cop, had received an earful from their platoon sergeant and our first sergeant. This whole other bag of worms had its own consequences that I'll share in a separate post. So while in Iraq, Dog Cop had his hands full with Kevin, but I'm only gonna share the juicy bits. One of the biggest issues with Kevin was he was a bit of a coward. He talked big game, but when it came to execution, he failed miserably. As Dog Cop's truck gunner, he developed a habit of dropping into the cab of their truck anytime anything remotely sounding like an explosion or gunshot was heard. Okay, my question is, what sounds like explosions just randomly throughout places? Now, to emphasize the issue with this, a truck's gunner is their lifeline. When trucks come under attack, it's up to all three members of the team to get them through any dangerous situation. The gunner has to provide defense while the driver finds an escape route, and the team leader calls for assistance and coordinates an escape route with the rest of their squad. This is the part where Kevin's team very nearly did not make it out of Iraq. The squad, basically 4 teams in separate trucks, had been on patrol when an improvised explosive device, an IED, was set off near Kevin and Dog Cop's truck. The squad started to receive heavy fire when, wouldn't you you know it, Kevin dropped down into the cab. Dog Cop began ordering Kevin to return fire, but Kevin, being Kevin, refused. Dog Cop then pushed Kevin out of the way and jumped into the turret to return fire, all the while calling for assistance. Long story short, Dog Cop is a badass, and they made it out alive. Dog Cop was furious at this point though. He'd been putting up with Kevin's bullcrap for a while, but this was the breaking point. After returning to camp, Dog Cop had Kevin meet him in a well-shaded area. He provided Kevin with a pair of gloves, a bottle of water, and allowed him to remove his outer shirt. Dog Cop proceeded to start smoking Kevin. Now, I know a lot of people expressed confusion as to what a smoking session consisted of in my Kramer story, so I'll elaborate. A smoking session is a punishment consisting of various physical exercises such as push-ups, sit-ups, whatever the smoker can think of to inflict on the smokee. The term smoking is a reference to the amount of vapor one exhumes while being smoked. You ever watch a pro football player and see the amount of steam billowing off of athletes on the sidelines? It's like that. It was more or less banned by the time I left the army due to some smokers taking the punishment too far, occasionally injuring the smokee. So Dog Cop begins the smoking session. Kevin lasts a rather pathetic 15 minutes before he reaches muscle failure, crying on the ground. Dog Cop released Kevin to get cleaned up. After cleaning himself up, Kevin then contacted Daddy, who is stationed a few camps over. Furious, Daddy and his entourage made a trip to our camp and demanded to see Kevin's chain of command. He proceeded to line them up from highest to lowest and went down the line, chewing every single one of them out for their perceived inadequacies, as well as their treatment of his son. When he got to Dog Cop, he managed to save some of the worst comments for him. When Daddy asked him if he had anything to say, Dog Cop let him have it. Dog Cop, plain as day, asked, "Is that your soldier?" Daddy was perplexed by this and said, "No." Dog Cop then asked, "If he was your soldier, would you have put up with the behavior he's demonstrated?" Daddy was perplexed and asked Dog Cop to explain. Apparently, Kevin never told Daddy about why he was being smoked, or any of the other shenanigans he'd been up to. Daddy thanked Dog Cop for the info and said,
"You know, you're right. I've been looking at this from a father's perspective, not a team leader's. If he were my soldier, I'd have taken similar actions."
He then apologized to the chain of command, and before leaving, informed his son that he was officially on his own. Kevin's face was ghost white as Daddy left him to fend for himself. To his credit though, Dog Cop didn't seek any kind of revenge, and actually proved to be the bigger man. Like the Kramer story, this is not the end, and I'll admit the next part I'm not super proud of. Thank you, user Entertainment360, I've seen you in the comments, for posting. Anyway, really interesting story here. Kevin is a dingbat and a wad, and many other dings, including an us, a dingus, you know? Alright, here we have part 2. Kevin the Soldier Part 2. A Battle of Wills. Hey guys, welcome back. This is the final part and I hope you enjoy. As mentioned, Kevin had an ego. While half of that was connected to Daddy, the other half was tied to his wife, Eve. Eve, apparently, was a girl he knew in high school. Not sure if they were friends, but it's pretty obvious from the way he talked about her, she was on a pedestal. During the deployment, there were a few times where people would question Kevin on random things, and Kevin would occasionally respond, "Have you seen my wife?" in a condescending way. She was fairly attractive and had a friendly personality. Before our deployment, Kevin managed to get her enrolled in TRICARE and got her on post housing, which was pretty amazing since he only did this in 2 weeks. I'm not 100% on this, but I'm pretty sure Daddy pulled some strings. Almost Almost immediately after we deployed though, Eve ended up in Tennessee to stay with a friend of hers. Kevin, being Kevin, didn't think anything of it. Oh no. While on deployment, Kevin noticed several times that his bank account had little to no money in it. Whenever Kevin and Dog Cop checked a bank account, it usually drained a few hours after he was paid. We're talking roughly between $1,500 to $1,700 a month, give or take. That's with his basic housing allowance, or BAH, and deployment cash. When Eve was asked, she would usually give aloof answers, nothing ever to the point. It eventually came down to Kevin having to go to the trouble of opening a separate checking account and not giving Eve any way to touch it except for the BAH. Legally, that was for her. When Kevin went on leave, he went to Tennessee to see Eve, but she initially wasn't anywhere near where she said she was. Kevin had to spend a day looking for her. He finally found her. She had been staying with one of her girlfriends and someone Eve claimed was the girlfriend's boyfriend. While on leave, Eve refused to have sex with him until he gave her access to the second bank account. So of course, she went right back to draining the bank account. But hey, he got laid, so win-win I guess. That's his wife. Upon returning, Kevin began having issues with his groin. When he went to see the medics, he found out he had herpes. He immediately called Eve and asked her about it. She claimed it must have come from her and the girlfriend fooling around. Of course, Kevin, being Kevin, he believed. To his credit though, he finally called her on her bullcrap when she started posting more pics of her and the girlfriend's boyfriend. It turned out she was fooling around with him. At this point, Kevin was crushed, so he went to Dog Cop's room, bawling, and told Dog Cop everything. At first, Dog Cop just told him, "I told you so," and wanted to shut the door, but as I've said, Dog Cop was a good man. He contacted Kevin's daddy, who also said, "I told you so," and they managed to open up another bank account that Eve did not have access to. Divorce paperwork was eventually drafted, and everything was set to be all is well. Except at the last minute, Kevin changed his mind and said he wanted to work it out with her. To his credit though, he didn't give Eve access to the third bank account. As far as I know, Kevin really didn't have much happen until the company returned from Iraq, with him and Eve joining our clique. I remember a group of us had planned to get lunch at one of our favorite greasy spoons in the area. We were to meet Kevin and Eve there and make plans for the night. When we got there, it was me, Party Boy, Big Mac, and Donkey Kong's cousin, Greg Kong. As we walked in, Eve had a booth to herself. Apparently she had a migraine and sent Kevin to Walmart to get her some aspirin. Greg Kong started giving Eve a hard time and she played it off with good spirits. After 15 minutes of waiting, Kevin arrived and took a seat with us. Greg Kong had started digging into him a bit and Kevin tried to redirect it towards me. Kevin proceeded to say, "At least I didn't get sent back early," to a few faint chuckles. Now, up to this point, I'd kept my mouth shut. I really didn't care for Kevin, but I wasn't about to let him take cheap shots on my behalf. I proceeded to reply, "Well, that's all good. Maybe next time I'll just hide in the cab of my truck and cry." The table erupted in laughter. Well, except for Eve. She had no idea what I was talking about. Apparently, Kevin had been telling her about how much of a badass he was this whole time. Now, a normal person would consider delivering a jab like that ample payback. I'm not most people. So I decided to attack Kevin with some petty revenge by taking surgical shots at his ego. But to be fair, I really didn't start my plan until later that night, and I'm really not proud of what I did. We ended up meeting at Starlight, one of the two country places in town, but they also specialized in hip-hop most nights as well. Weird combo, I know. Everyone else had more or less gotten countryed up, except for me and Kevin, but that's mostly because I'm not a fan of country music, and Kevin wanted to show off his tattoos. Eve was wearing a red button button-up shirt, white short shorts, and a small white cowboy hat. We found a table, and Kevin had ordered drinks for himself. Eve began to tug on Kevin to go out dancing with her, but he refused, even getting physical and screaming at her to leave him alone. Damn. This is where I swooped in. I took her out to the dance floor, and we got really close. Nellie's Ride With It was playing, and that was my jam. While I focused on her, I made sure to make eye contact with Kevin more than once, letting him know that there was nothing he could do to stop me. Every time I locked eyes with him, I could see him get more and more defeated. Now, to clarify, I had no intentions of sleeping with Eve. I'm not a homewrecker, but man was I tempted. I made this a habit of mine for the next few weeks. We go out to dinner. There I was, sitting next to Eve. Group movie night, me and Eve split popcorn. She conveniently forgets her jacket. Oh, hey, take mine. As well as a few light jabs at Kevin, who wouldn't give up his, etc., etc. So finally, Party Boy asked me what the deal was. I explained, and he asked if I planned on sleeping with her. I told him no, and he informed me of the herpes. At this point, I was unaware. Well, that night at Wild Country, the other country place, everyone's asking who would go on the mechanical bull. At this point, I'm officially 21 and had been drinking, so I hop on. Eve jumps on behind me and immediately scoots in close. I end up pushing her slightly back and then placed a cushion between us. Oh my god. Oh my god. We ended up lasting maybe 2.3 seconds if y'all are interested. I don't know if that was to be like, hey, you know what, you're married, back up, or hey, get your herpes off my ass. After that, I saw less and less of Eve, mostly due to the road commitment our company had taken on, but also because Kevin and Eve had left our clique. Kevin and Eve eventually moved in with some mutual friends of mine, and they shared a place, so I occasionally saw her there. Apparently, they fought a lot. After a while, Kevin was given orders to Germany, so they left. I'm not sure what happened to Eve as Kevin finally divorced her. After that, Kevin stayed in the army and is now a combat advisor. He apparently really turned himself around. Hey, good for Kevin, and bad on Eve. That's messed up. I feel really bad that he got cheated on. And you know what? You can call him dumb for taking her back. When you're in a relationship and you love someone, they can really convince you. They're really convinced. Okay, so just take it easy on Kevin. At least with this one. The first one, that was pathetic. But I'm glad OP acknowledged that Kevin became, less of a Kevin. This story's called Kevin Finds a Grenade. Kevin, male, about 40 at the time, and about 4 or 5 Kevinoid friends were camping on federal land and found an unfired grenade, the kind you would shoot out of the M79 grenade launcher. He brings the grenade back to camp and, as Kevin is wont to do, he throws it in the campfire. They all hide behind their trucks and the grenade goes pop. So they all come out and gather around the fire, and now the main charge goes off and they all get torn up with fragments, and the main Kevin gets it the worst, critically injured and permanently disabled, with the others all having some degree of injuries. They all attempt to sue the government for negligence, and the judge tosses the suit out. Well, good. That was just stupid. That's it. Stupidity. That's all. Idiots. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.